Hello and welcome to episode 200 of the Ego Chall Podcast. My name is Preston Byers, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Justin Binkowski. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about the second week of the 2026 Call of Duty League season. We will also be discussing kind of the state of Call of Duty and the state of the Call of Duty League. I think we might have a pretty interesting conversation. We obviously don't have too much news in the way of the CDL this past week because obviously this is our second episode of the week and we talked about quite a bit on Sunday's episode. But I actually think just from the pre-show we had quite a bit to talk about. So I think we should have quite a bit to talk about actually during the real show. But before we get to any of that, how are you doing, Bink?
Yeah, doing all right. Like you said, not too much, but maybe more than we anticipated even just 5 minutes ago. And it should be a relatively quick one, but might be just as action packed as some other ones. So should be fun.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we should probably just mention off the top is that Telluride Bush did win that Challengers Cup that we were talking about throughout the entire show. From last episode, they beat Cabal Gaming in the finals. Cabal's Icons, KB, Millie, and Rupert. And so Telluride Bush, Capstone, Prolute, Spart, and TJ won the final 4-1. So congrats to them. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that. Obviously, we did talk quite a bit about just like their circumstances over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I think honestly you can look at this in two ways. Obviously, it's pretty awesome for a team with support from Barstool. However, that whole situation shakes out. Like it's be getting new eyes on um, the challenger scene, and potentially that could even have a ripple effect to get more eyes on the professional scene and the CDL matches. So that's interesting. It's also four guys in Capital, Prolute, Spartan, TJ who have all been in the pro league at different times and on different teams and still finding success. That's nothing new to challengers, but it's always good to see that, and it's potentially, we've seen it over the years, the challengers teams that get off to a hot start, they potentially have uh the most success in transferring players to the CDL, because if you're doing well in challengers and the CDL team is struggling, they're obviously going to look at the top challengers team, so that's good for their potential prospects to get back into the pro league. But I think a under discussed topic, just looking at this finals and how the Challengers Cup shook down, is really this other team that TJ and crew played against. I had never heard of any of these guys, and the fact that they made it to the finals, they beat, I believe they beat Arcides Priesta, King of Bodhi, and Paul X twice or no, because they lost to Bush.
Yeah.
So they beat them in the losers. I think they beat like Geo and Awakenings team. So like,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know anything about these guys, but that could just be, it could be early season challengers fluke thing where these guys are just four grinders, haven't gotten off the game since it launched, and they're ahead of everybody, or they could potentially be four unknown or new names to keep an eye on throughout the rest of the season and potentially moving forward. So I think that I really feel like I haven't seen many people talking about that other side of it. I mean, they did kind of get destroyed in the finals here by Telluride Bush, but it is interesting, and something that came across my mind, and maybe is just something we'll have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I've seen Rupert's name, but I don't know what the context would have been. Maybe it was just I saw like a Challengers result or something a while ago, but I'm trying to look to see if like he has any weird results or um, something that pops out. But I don't see anything on his COD Gamepedia. He did play with you in MW3, so you, Noisy, Mock, Rupert. You guys got fourth at Toronto. I don't know how you didn't know him,
Nice.
but yeah, that's kind of crazy. Um, yeah, I think I think it is one way to look at it. Certainly is that the former CDL pros are still dominating challengers to a large extent. There are some exceptions, like obviously the beginning of the last season. It was one of the Omit teams. Granted, there were like former CDL pros on there, but like obviously you had Fellows team. I'm like drawing a blank on the rookie that went up to LAG.
Lunars.
Lunars, yeah. So Lunars was kind of like an unknown going into the year, and then obviously he was like the kind of the shining star coming out of like the early part of the Challenger season, and there have been plenty of examples like that. But by and large, we've seen that former CDL pros are just like overwhelmingly dominant when it comes to challengers, and I don't know if like anybody's gonna be too enticed to pick up this team, like TJ's team, because like they're all known quantities. Like there's nothing on that team where you're like, well, I could see like taking a risk on like TJ, for example. Is TJ has been on a pro team. This is like the first time he's been in challengers, I believe, like in his pro career. Like he's pretty much been a CDL fixture. And then obviously Capsule, Proloot, Spart, they've been like in and out over the years. But I mean, I think you just kind of know what you're getting out of those players, and maybe it'll get them picked up or get one of them picked up. I think TJ is probably most definitely the most likely of the crew to come to the CDL again. But yeah, congratulations to them. Obviously, this is big for the Barstool guys that are like sponsoring the team, even though I'm sure they were not too pleased with how the tournament actually ended up with it going so long. I don't even know what time it ended, but we did our show like pretty late, and it
was like 2 a.m.
Yeah,
I watched the finals.
Yeah, so that's an all day tournament and a lot of downtime, which is not great for viewership and the attention that you want from something like that. So we'll see if any changes come about. Probably not, but it would be nice if all this attention that the Barstool guys are giving them does result in some kind of improvement for the challengers down there. I think most of the rest of the episode, aside obviously from doing our predictions, will be on the state of Call of Duty and the CDL. Like you said, like 5 minutes before we went live, we didn't really have a ton to talk about. I had saved a tweet from Brian Stats 1 on Twitter, and then you had these like blog posts and like rumors about like the games, the actual games themselves. My tweet was about the CDL. So which way do you want to start first? Do you want to start just talking about the actual game, or do you want to talk about the CDL at large?
I think we could do the game first. I think just because we'll probably have less to talk about on that.
So you're telling me during the pre-show that this Activision is saying, okay, no more back-to-back Black Ops games, no more back-to-back Modern Warfare games. So we were actually going through it, what games have come out in what year. So it was MW2 and then MW3 back-to-back, and then Black Ops 6, and now obviously Black Ops 7 back-to-back. And I said, like, who cares at this point, because they don't create anything new anyway, generally. The last game that wasn't like a part of an installment or an installment in a larger series of titles was Vanguard, and Vanguard was like absolutely despised by the community, and people hated that game. And before that, we had to go back all the way to like 2016, 2017 in World War II, which that is not despised, I will say. Like, if they kind of put all the detail and the effort into World War II that they do into like this next game, I think that works out, and we could have like a really or not the next game, but whatever, like 2-3 games from now. I think that could work out, but I'm pretty sure like they're just not going to do that. Like, that doesn't feel like something they're actually, I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot less detail put into these games nowadays, and it's more copy paste. Like, we're going to take stuff that worked in the old games and we're going to update it here. Where World War II, I could be wrong, but like the only thing that I can really remember from like copy paste was like Shipment, and it was like a version of Shipment, I'm pretty sure. Other than that, I can't really think of anything that they brought over from previous titles. And that was also, we have to really put this out there, that was 8 years ago. Like, I was in my teens still when that game came out. I'm in my late 20s now, so we're far past that. I want to get your thoughts on it though. What do you think of this kind of like decree, if you want to call it that, from Activision saying, "Hey, we're not going to just go back to back Modern Warfare, not going to go back to back Black Ops."
Yeah, I think the other thing with MW or sorry World War II was also, you got to keep in mind that that was the return to boots on the ground
Yeah,
after several years of jetpack games. So I think there were people who criticized World War II for being a little like bland and not like lively colors, which if you think about it like historically it makes sense for like the time period and whatever, but like it didn't appease a ton of fans in terms of like visual clarity for the game. But whatever, I like that game, so it is what it is. But in terms of this post here on, you know, the future of Call of Duty, I think one thing that I saw the community speaking about is like it feels like this potentially is being addressed due to a lack of success with the launch of Black Ops 7, which is an interesting way to interpret it. I don't know if I fully agree with that. There was Charlie Intel did uh, tweet out that their sources have indicated that Black Ops 7 player counts are lower than that of Black Ops 6 and Modern Warfare 3 during their respective few weeks after launch. So it's possible that this is like, you know, not like a giant red flag, but it may be like, you know, hitting a DEFCON 1 button or however you want to phrase it. And Call of Duty's like, okay, we got to do something here because, you know, even if like Charlie Intel continues in its tweet about this saying, but Call of Duty has many players overall that quote unquote doing worse than previous years is still higher than competitors. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way is that, you know, Activision and the devs or whatever, if their money is being impacted in any way, they seemingly are like, oh, this is, we got to do something, and that's always been the thing we've said over the years, like, well, don't buy the stuff in game, and maybe we'll get changes, and it never works out that way, but you know, people have made that claim, and it is interesting to think about it in that perspective. Um, but overall, for me, I think the thing, and I kind of feel it with Black Ops 7, even though I have enjoyed playing the zombies a lot. It feels like with Black Ops 7 coming right after Black Ops 6 that it was basically just like a DLC for the previous game. It wasn't
yeah,
its own game.
hmm
Same thing with Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3 coming after Modern Warfare 2. That was like an actual report that it was going to be
yeah,
like a DLC thing, and so then it became its own game after, or whatever the reports are actually truthful, or what actually happened, whatever, splitting hairs there. But um, I think that's the biggest indication is that clearly that formula has angered enough people to potentially impact sales of the game, and Call of Duty making a change to address that means that this is not an insignificant factor in what is going on. So I think it's, you know, for as much as I love Treyarch games, like the cycle that was previously instituted of having those a different game every year from a different dev, it was like a breath of fresh air, and it was something different, but whether that was good or bad can be argued. I think maybe that'll help if we get out of these Black Ops and Modern Warfare sub series and get into
hmm
something new that really pops off. That's probably the path forward to the most success for Call of Duty as a franchise. As much as I love Black Ops and the OG Modern Warfare titles, like they've been around a long time. It might be time to take Old Yeller out back and, you know, lay him to rest. So definitely some interesting implications here from just a very simple blog post. Um, because at the end of the day, you put out a blog post saying like, oh, there's a free trial for Black Ops 7 this week, and we're committed to unprecedented seasonal support. and then our strategy going forward is changing. Like it's 3 bullet points that it's probably like 300 words in total,
Mm-hmm.
but then you have to read deeper into that, into what could potentially be causing Call of Duty to have this communication, which is not. I mean, they aren't. They have over the years improved in terms of what they're communicating and addressing the community and stuff, but they still aren't great at all times about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I feel like we got to try and read between the lines here, and there has to be something bigger at play. I'm not gonna like go full doom and gloom and be like, oh, Black Ops 7 is you know destroying their
No.
sales, and they got to do something drastic to change things around. But obviously, it seems pretty clear to me that we can assume that the launch of Black Ops 7 was not as successful as they would have liked, and as a result, it has caused them to critically think about what they want to do going forward. I think that's a pretty fair statement to take away from it.
Oh, for sure. Do you know when the last non-Black Ops Treyarch game was?
World at War.
Yeah, World at War, 2008. I was 10,
It's
so
my favorite Call of Duty of all time.
yeah, and it's been 17 years since it was released,
God
and
damn.
like that shows, and they're the only one of the developers that has been like consistent about the brand, really. Like every game since then, starting with Black Ops in 2010, for the last 15 years, every time a Treyarch game has come around, it has been a Black Ops game. Um, like they were tied or they were numbered except Cold War, which was
Cold War,
Black
yeah.
Ops 5.
Yeah.
Everybody else, like, I mean, the thing about like Sledgehammer, for example, is like they have a pretty like diverse, I would say,
Yes.
set of games. Like you start with Advanced Warfare, which was like unprecedented for the time. Obviously, like that started the jetpack era, which obviously is very polarizing just in general. But I appreciate the leap that they took to be like, we're gonna try something different here, and it was certainly different. I don't know if I think it was probably. I mean, Black Ops 3 was definitely the best of the jetpack era. I never played Infinite Warfare, so I can't really give like a good shout. I did watch a lot of it. I preferred AW from like a viewer's perspective. But then Sledgehammer came around with World War II. So like you think about those two games, AW and World War II, like they could not be any different, basically. Like they are so far and away like almost polar opposites of each other. And then they come back with Vanguard, which is more like a traditional Call of Duty, like more modern Call of Duty. And then they did MW3. So I don't know what you really make. And like you said, it was basically a DLC. And that was the report that it was going to be
Yeah.
whatever $20-$30 for the end of MW3 DLC, and that they weren't actually going to release a new game. And then I'm sure somebody in like the accounting department was like, why would we do that? Why wouldn't we just charge these suckers like $70 and then just give them a whole new game? And that's what they ended up doing. And people would just kind of notice like this is not any different really than what we got in MW2, which was not like a super popular game. But yeah, I think I just have a hard time believing what they're saying, to be quite honest. Activision, like them saying, well, we're not going to put out back-to-back MW games or back-to-back Black Ops games. That doesn't mean that they won't put out those games, though. Like they'll just do like they'll go Black Ops 7, and then the rumor is that it'll be a Modern Warfare game, I think you said, and
Yep.
then they'll there's like a Sledgehammer game that comes after that, which according to Charlie Intel, this tweet said new Call of Duty sub franchise from Sledgehammer in 2027. So like there's that, but then they're in 2028. Like it's very possible that we'll just get Black Ops 8 or whatever they want to call the eighth Black Ops game, right? It's just that they said they're not going to do it back to back, and I guess that's good. I guess that takes like that allows the devs from Treyarch or whatever studio to be like, we have 3 to 4 years to figure things out for this game, and then we can kind of do it all over again. I don't know. Like to me, the it's pretty clear. Like we've said it so many times before, but like the reason that like we talk about Call of Duty Mobile is like not because we think like it's not like we play it, but like we like the idea of something like that where it's a consistently updated game that has obviously worked well for like a game like League of Legends. There's no League of Legends 2. It's just like they've updated, like it's unrecognizable basically. Like if you played League of Legends back when it came
Yeah.
out and now you'd be like, what is this? But at the same point, it's still the same game. And Call of Duty certainly could do that if they just put out Call of Duty. And even though there is already a Call of Duty game like titled that, and if they just said this is the final Call of Duty game, we're going to update it every year. Every November, we're going to do a massive end of year update where it's basically a new game. We're going to like change all these different features, all the guns, all the maps, whatever. And that's what we're going to do. But we're going to keep like some core elements that we think are very popular with our fan base. I think people would really enjoy that. I mean, they don't put out a new Warzone every year. I know there is like a Warzone 2, which is really stupid in my opinion, but like they did that, and I think that's worked out for them. I think that's a pretty big moneymaker for them, but that's just not going to happen because like they're just all about money. So it doesn't really matter about like what the quality of the game is. It just matters that people are buying the games and people are playing them to the extent that they make money. So
Yep.
that's really all that matters in the end. Not to be super bleak and super depressing and pessimistic about it, but I don't have any reason to believe the Activision when they say these things. Even if they believe that part of the player count or part of the uh, lackluster sales or reception of the game is like just because it's a back-to-back game. It's like no, because you guys just don't. There's not a ton of care and love put into the games, and maybe there was never that, right? Maybe there was always kind of the same MO of like we're just putting out a game. It's really not that big of a deal back in the day, but people definitely got the idea that like Treyarch was like super boots on the ground, not like no pun intended, but like they were a part of the community. They loved it so much that they did everything. They tried to listen to the community as much as possible, and I don't think people have that thought about Treyarch anymore, and they certainly don't have it about IW. And Sledgehammer probably just doesn't have like any sort of reputation, as far as I know. Like people didn't like Vanguard, but I don't know if like people have a thought about Sledgehammer as like a bad studio. But that certainly is the case with IW because basically everything since basically like MW3. I know people like Ghost now. I did not think that Ghost was a very popular title when it came out, considering it came after Black Ops 2. But I don't think people have a very positive opinion of IW. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's my bias. But yeah, enough of my rambling. I just think there's no reason to believe them, and I'm interested to see what actually happens. I'd like to see the new sub franchise. They've just explored so much, right? Maybe we get like a Revolutionary War Call of Duty. Like maybe we don't have automatic guns back then, but like maybe they could just do something weird. I don't know. Like they've done basically from everything from they I guess they could do World War One because they did that at some point, but like it's been a while, and maybe they do something like that. I don't know. Is there something that you would like to see from Call of Duty future games?
Yeah, I don't really know exactly what they could do. My fear is especially, and this is only personal because I know other people will disagree with this, but um especially if sales are impacted with these current titles or the last few, they might be enticed to go back to more of a jetpack era style game. Um, and I've over the years just said how much I absolutely hated those titles, and that just wasn't for me. I'm always gonna be a boots on the ground guy, and even in what I've limitedly played in of Black Ops 7, like there's crack kids wall bouncing off stuff, and I'm just like, no, I'm just gonna stay on the ground and
Yeah.
try and shoot straighter than you. um so I think it's very possible that that could be one avenue, that it's like a return to the jetpack era could maybe rally some troops and get some people excited who enjoyed that era. But personally, I would not be a fan of that. So that's just where my mind went immediately for a new. I don't even know what they would call it, or if that would technically be a new sub franchise because they've already done something like that. Um, so yeah, I'm not really sure what they could do, but if they figured out some way to make it work with some sub franchise that gets the people going and gets people excited about Call of Duty again, I'm all for it, even if it is something that I personally am not a huge fan of.
I mean, they really haven't explored like the 90s and like early 2000s, right? Like that, I think that's like the only portion of history over the last 100 years that they haven't exploited, because they've done like basically everything from like 1914 up to whatever, I don't even know what 2150 is, like whatever the jetpack games are supposed to be. So um yeah, so maybe it's something like around the time of like COD 4, like in terms of the setting, but does that really matter? Like even a little bit now, because the games don't really revolve around the campaign nearly as much as they used to, and the gameplay doesn't seem to be super like time sensitive either, because they'll do weird stuff like regardless of when the game is supposed to be. So I don't know like if there is anything. Maybe they'll just do it like on the moon or something for the next game. You never
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Let's talk about the future, or I guess the state of the Call of Duty League. Now that we've talked about the Call of Duty stuff, um, so Brian Stats, who always gives like really great stats for the CDL, he posted on Twitter. I think this was on Monday, and I just thought it was an interesting tweet, and I thought it might be a good jumping off point for a conversation about the CDL. Now that we don't have any original CDL brands in the league anymore, with the rebranding of the Toronto Ultra to Toronto Koi. We've had more rebrands and more relocations this offseason, with the Vegas Falcons becoming the Riyadh Falcons, the Los Angeles Gorillas mate becoming the Paris Gentlemates. Um, we had the Minnesota Rocker turn into G2 Minnesota. I'm sure I'm forgetting some teams, but the point is that like this is an unrecognizable league basically from 2019 2020 when the league started, and I want to get your thoughts on how you feel about the CDL just in general, and not just the season. Obviously, we're only 1 week into the year, and we don't know how the season and how this game will really play out in the long term. But just your kind of gut reaction to the CDL as it stands now.
I think before gut reaction there, and just on the topic of like the brands changing, whatever, we got to remember too, like when the league started in 2019 2020, they were literally trying to do these home series events, like traveling to all these different places
Yeah.
every weekend or every other weekend, and then COVID
Mm-hmm.
hits and that completely derailed. So like the original vision of what Activision or whoever involved actually wanted the CDL to be has never really been fully actualized. And
It's true. Yeah.
you can argue whether that's for the good or the worse, but um in terms of like how I feel about the CDL right now, I actually feel better than probably I have in a while. Um, I think it'll be important how this game actually plays out, how it's addressed, how it's fixed, if like viewership is retained throughout the whole season, yada
Mm-hmm.
yada. But we talked about it at different points over the off season, like they got the schedule 95% released earlier than ever before, and then it was 100% released before the season started. I don't know if that's ever actually happened. Um, Back on Twitch for the first time in a while, which should have a positive impact on viewership. I honestly didn't really pay too much attention to the viewership this past weekend, so that was kind of stupid on my part. But um, that should the option to watch on Twitch or YouTube should um, help in terms of potential viewership gains. Um, some of these new brands that are coming in that you mentioned and in the Brian Stats post, like, getting Koi to have, like, and Gentle Mates and some of these other um, locations and in Europe and around the world, and trying to get fan bases from different areas is a part of some of these rebrands seemingly. And then we talked about uh, Telluride Bush for challengers. I don't want to get too crazy with them because I still feel like at the end of the day, it's really not a quote unquote Barstool team. It is a
Mm-hmm.
sub project for three guys who just happen to work at Barstool. And it could, I mean, I would love for Barstool to go fully all in on a Call of Duty team. And I think that would be massive for the scene. I just don't envision that right now. There have been a couple um, like clips and stuff of the Jersey Jerry talking to Big Cat and Dave Portnoy, two of the I don't know what Big Cat's actual title is. I think he's like a co-owner, but whatever. Two of the higher
Mm-hmm.
ups there for Barstool, and neither of them seemed actually interested in investing significant money in this. So I don't want to get too far ahead of that, but the fact that it's like at a time where you could argue it's the worst possible time to be investing in a challengers Call of Duty team for some people like Mook, Jersey Jerry, and Sass to take on a project like this is interesting, and how it could develop is an exciting prospect. But I don't want to get too far ahead of that and just be like, oh yeah, Barstool's in Call of Duty and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
take off from there. Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, like the schedule stuff, we know what to expect for this full season. Um, Even on top of that, the return to events in Europe this year and a new format. I know you weren't as thrilled about the 11 match qualifier slate
Mm-hmm.
um, before Major 2, but I really like that just in terms of competitive integrity. Every team has to play every other team to try to qualify for the tournament. So we're experimenting. We saw that last year too with the minor tournaments being added. We're continually experimenting with the format of the CDL and potentially getting ideas for future seasons. I feel like there's a lot of there's a lot to actually be excited about, and I don't know how if I would have said that in previous seasons. I mean, even with the game, like the sniper stuff that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, like would it be awesome if there were no GAs for the sniper and you're just able to use it whenever you want? Yes, but is this a happy middle ground until potentially the sniper is less overpowered, aim assist gets adjusted, yada yada? I truly believe this is a good middle ground, and I think it could even be really exciting for like just the strategic element of search and destroy, as opposed to just we saw in past titles where it's just four guys sprinting at a bomb as fast as they can and trying to just kill the other team and not even worry about the objective. It's just a 4v4 one life TDM round in 20 seconds. Like the evolution of S&D to be more strategic for somebody like me who truly loves search and destroy. um that's another exciting element to look at. But that obviously isn't that's more player related than the actual league itself. But yeah, kind of rambled there, but I do think I just listed off several redeeming qualities or just features that over the last couple months are things that maybe we wouldn't have been able to talk about if they weren't actually addressed to the way that they were. And I think that's, at least for me, something to be excited about in terms of the future of the CDL.
I, I am. I agree with you on really almost all of that. My my feeling about the CDL right now is that there's no reason for it to be in as good of a position as it is. I think that's probably the plainest way I can say it. Um, the CDL has been kind of kneecapped by Activision like over the years. I mean, just look at the buy-in at the beginning of the CDL, right? $25 million per team, a 12-team league. Like that's a ridiculous amount that they they didn't get in the end, but those teams agreed to pay 25 million or more depending on what reports you saw. That is crazy. That was crazy at the time. That didn't make sense at the time, and obviously it didn't end up working out like that because of COVID, and then teams got refunded or reimbursed by Activision and all that stuff. So, but I think what you saw there was a belief by the powers that be that this could be something, that this could be like the next big esport. And then the CDL just kind of went into the wilderness for a little bit. Like we went into esports winter and the CDL was like very much bundled up to go into the esports winter with it. Had a lot of online events, still have a lot of online play. Like most of the season, the overwhelming majority of the season is online, which is certainly a cost cutting move, and it makes sense for them. The CDL does very little promotion, I would say. Does very little kind of collaboration with the games itself.
I will say,
Yeah.
don't want to cut you off fully, but I was very surprised when I turned on Call of Duty on it. I think it was Thursday last week, because Thursday was when the update came, and literally the first thing that came up was it was a picture of, I believe, Shotzi, Scrap, and I want to say Hydra, but I don't think it was two LAT players. But it was three players on my screen, and it was like, tune in, Call of Duty League is starting this weekend. Something. And I was like, holy shit, I can't believe this is actually I didn't have to go out of my way in game to find it. It popped up on my screen for me right when I loaded in.
Is it like do they have like a built-in player? Like if you clicked on it, would you be able to watch it like on the game?
I don't think so. I know they've had that before.
Yeah,
Obviously, I think
that's why
this
I
was
asked.
just like a pop-up notification.
Interesting. So I mean that's obviously great. That's what you hope, right? Is
Yes,
that
I mean we shouldn't have to celebrate something
yeah.
like that.
Like that should be the standard for
Yeah.
every season, every week, every month of the CDL's existence. It should have been front and center of like basically the marketing should be, do you want to watch the very best players at this game play this game? Do you want to watch people that are so unfathomably better than you at Call of Duty play Call of Duty? That is kind of how they should have marketed it. The problem is this is 2025. The inaugural season was 2020. This is the 6th season of the CDL. This is what, if we're including the CWL, this is what, like almost year 10 or close to it of like this Activision, like centrally Activision backed Call of Duty League. It shouldn't be like this. It should have always been front and center. It should have always been something that Activision really wanted to market kind of as a tool of them of their game. Just as I'm sure like Valve has their reasons and their own stuff, but they definitely push Dota. They push the international. Like me and you don't give one shit about TI, but when you see like 25-30 million dollars prize pool and like a massive crowd and they're marketing as like this is the tournament to watch, it's pretty interesting. Like it's intriguing to be like, all right, like I don't know anything about Dota, but I might tune in to see somebody make $25 million today. And CSGO, like the majors, although I think they have decreased in relevance over the past few years from their peak, but they had more than 1 million people in like North America and Europe watching those majors. And like CSGO, like the actual game itself like eclipse 1 million active players, and it had been out for 15 years. And it's like, that is basically, that is a marketing tool. They literally is like, all right, this is the best of the best playing this game. Doesn't this want to make you play this game? Like, how about you buy, for $20, buy CSGO on Steam and play it? And Call of Duty can operate in that kind of same vein of like, isn't it so much fun when you watch Optic win the world championship? Go buy Black Ops 6. Go buy this game for $60. Give us some money. And it's kind of like a scratch your back, I'll scratch mine, that kind of stuff.
Before I ever owned a Call of Duty, I just looked it up because I'm pretty sure it was this. Battlefield 2142 was a 2006 game, so the timeline works out because I would have been 13 in 2006. I saw this game on TV. I'm pretty sure it's Battlefield 2142. If it's not, just roll with it as an example. I saw it on TV and I was like, this is awesome. I told my dad. Dad actually watched it with me. He's like, okay, we're going to go get this. We went and bought it and came home, and our PC, my internet's always been an issue, as longtime Ego Chall fans know. But my PC at that time when I was 13 was also, it was like an old Dell. It was like one of those ones that's like a white tower. It wasn't even like an actual PC at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't even download the game. So I literally never could actually play it. I could probably go downstairs in the basement and find the game and the disc to confirm what it was. But like, that was how I got introduced to like that. And obviously it didn't actually manifest into me ever playing it because I never ended up playing it, and then obviously went to Call of Duty and all that yada yada. But I mean, it is not a stretch to say that that's a possibility for somebody to watch something at a very competitive level and just be like, I want to do that. And it happened to me to some extent. Could happen for others too. So it that should be what the competitive Call of Duty scene is for the higher ups at Activision and stuff. It shouldn't just be this thing that they're just like, yeah, we're gonna let it do its own thing in the corner and then never address it.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of putting on these events? Like, they had no reason to put on like COD XP in 2011.
No,
Like,
yeah.
that was a marketing thing.
Well,
The game wasn't even out
yes,
yet.
that's
Like,
a, yeah.
that was literally like, this game is not out, and we're gonna have like these pro players come in and put on this $1 million tournament. Like, that didn't make any sense. Like, there's no financial reward for like this $1 million event. So you're gonna give away $1 million to these, like, this is like really early like modern internet too. Like, the streaming infrastructure was really not there. Like, Twitch was not a big thing at the times. Like, guys were probably on Justin.tv streaming their games. But they're really like, mostly it was YouTube videos, and that was about it. Like, it just didn't have kind of the motion basically that a few years later it certainly would. But like, I can remember, and the reason I asked you about like if you could click on the game or on the stream when they put it on the game. So Black Ops, and I've told this story before, but it's a good point to retell it now. Black Ops 2 COD Champs, like the OG COD Champs, because COD XP was like its own thing. COD Champs 2013, I think it was March of 2013. I was playing Black Ops 2 with friends from, I would have been in high school at that point, I guess. And there was like on the Xbox dashboard, there was like a thing that said like, tune in for the Call of Duty Championship 2013, whatever. And it was like a little box. And I was like, what is that? Like, what am I even supposed to be looking at? And I clicked on it, and you could watch it in the Xbox dashboard. And I watched, I don't know if I watched the whole thing, but I definitely watched Parasite's butt crack on stream. So I watched the grand finals at the very least, and I was hooked. Like, I literally, my life was changed from that moment on. Like, and that's not even exaggerating, because I would have never like gotten into Call of Duty esports. I would have never gotten into esports in general. Like, at least at that point, I would have never worked at Dot for however long I did. Like, that literally was like a life-changing moment to watch a Call of Duty tournament. And not everybody. I'm not saying like this is going to happen to everybody. Everybody that watches COD Champs from now on is going to have their lives changed.
Yeah.
But that can happen. And it would never have happened, at least at that moment, that time, that place. It would not have happened if it wasn't on the Xbox dashboard. If it wasn't easily accessible to I would have been 15, to a 15-year-old who did not really know what Call of Duty esports was, or what esports, like competitive gaming. I didn't know that. Like, I didn't watch like Halo on USA Network or anything like that. Like, I didn't see like the Battlefield thing that you were talking about. Like, I just never saw that. I think maybe at one point I had watched like a nade shot video at like before then, but I never put two and two together that he was like an esports player, that he was like an important figure in competitive gaming. It just never like really, I never connected those two dots. But like that was a huge thing for me, and that is what you hope to have. You hope that happens. And I bought like so many Call of Duty games over the years. I've spent hundreds of dollars, like literally hundreds of dollars over the years I've spent on this game that I continually bitch about for more than a decade. And granted, I haven't played Call of Duty in several years now, but like the point still stands. I've hosted a Call of Duty esports podcast for whatever 4 or 5 years we've been doing this. And isn't that what the game, or what the developers and what the studios and what the business people that are so disconnected from like what's actually going on in their game studios, isn't that what they really should be wanting? Is like these people that just like, this is their lives now. This is a part of who they are. Just as the same as like you're a Steelers fan. Like if the Steelers just didn't exist tomorrow, you'd be like, a part of me is empty. Like I have no idea what to do with myself if the Steelers didn't. Well, maybe this is not the greatest time in the world to be talking about that, but 4 weeks ago when the Steelers were winning all their games or whatever, like maybe at that point it would have been like a really big thing. But
the Yankees, you would have been onto something.
Well, you guys are, I didn't know what your relationship was to the Yankees after this past postseason. I didn't know if you're like ready to fire Aaron Boone out of the cannon or something. But yeah, like rant aside, like this is what I hope that the CDL accomplishes. I want people to be able to watch it as easily as possible. I want it to be on Twitch. I want it to be on YouTube. I want it to be on Kick. I want it to be on Rumble. Like whatever, like just put it on something and let people kind of find it where they are. I want it to, I've said like I'm sorry, there's a Windows ad for some reason that just popped up. I think that the location stuff, like I won't go into a big rant, but I think it could be alienating to a certain section of the audience because, like Cloud9 New York. New York is our biggest city in this country, and you are obviously a fan of a New York team, even though you are not located like in New York, but like Connecticut is like New York East. But I think it can be alienating because if you knew that like the Connecticut Cloud9 and they represent Connecticut, and then you find out that like, none of them live in Connecticut, they have no like base in Connecticut, they've never even been to Connecticut, like they don't do anything to promote themselves in the state. I think that could be like, like why would I root for this team that's just like kind of using my home state as kind of a marketing tool while not giving anything back to it? Like there's no connection. I can't go to a game in Hartford or whatever. I can't watch Cloud9 play live in the state. I think that kind of like that's what they're doing with like the UFL, like the XFL's like merged league where they all play in like one state all at once or whatever. And I just don't think that's not exciting in the least. And I think that kind of stuff could be a detriment. So I hope that we get to the point within the next few years where it is just Optic, it is just FaZe, it's 100 Thieves, it's Cloud9, it's G2 Esports. Like I think that just makes the most sense. We're already half a step there. We've made so much progress basically in that the last few years. That I think that's the way to go moving forward. Even though the brands, I don't really have a problem with the brands, and I really haven't had a problem with the brands being changed over the years. I understand that, and we've made the comparison to like the early days of the NFL or the NBA, where like these teams that you haven't even heard of were once a part of these leagues that are like now institutions in America. Um, like the I'm fairly certain, I think it was the AFL, but like the Kansas City Chiefs were the Dallas Texans, I want to say, before they like moved to Kansas City and all that stuff. Obviously there was like a St. Louis Browns, and now there's like obviously a Cleveland Browns. Like a lot of these teams that we now know and love, and like these brands that could never ever change. Like they can't ever change the Steelers logo, or like the city of Pittsburgh will burn it to a crisp. But once upon a time, I'm sure it was not unfathomable to be like, let's change this stupid logo. Like why do we only have one logo on one side of the helmet? Like, shouldn't we just put it on both? And like that kind of stuff that seems crazy now, I'm sure was once a discussion. I think that's kind of a similar situation that the CDL is in. Hopefully they could become the size of the NFL or the NBA, because we're getting super rich if that's the case. But yeah, I just think that it has to be accessible. It has to be like as kind of viewer friendly and user friendly as possible. The Activision groups have to be kind of on board with pushing this game and this league, and the players themselves, because we've seen it so many times over the years. The players are the most important part. Like the individual players are so critical to the league, with Nadeshot and Scump, and even like the villains of the league at some point, like Aches and Crimsix was once a villain, I guess. Clayster, like these players are kind of just like a part of it. So again, long rant, but that's kind of how I feel, kind of how I want things to go over, hopefully the next few years for the CDL.
No, and I think full circle too, like getting back to what we were talking about at the start, the um one of the points I mentioned with the rebrands was getting new fans in, but at the same time, like the original CDL, I've said it before that I think Toronto Ultra and Minnesota Rocker were two of the best at like getting actual Minnesota and Toronto fans involved with the team. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just like, Optic and FaZe and 100 Thieves having their fans root for the team regardless. Like, those were two of the organizations that really bought into the geolocation aspect of it, um, and tried to build a fandom in the local community with events, watch parties, etc. And I thought they did a real job. So that is one downside to these um, rebrands, where we lose some of these brands that started out as nothing. Like I've joked about it before. I saw the Rocker name for the first time and I was like, what the hell is this O with a slash through it? But over the years it grew on me, and I really thought it was cool. And I've always said I thought the organization did a really good job from the get-go of trying to get people invested. But I think that probably has been the biggest I don't think growing pain is the right word, but I can't really think of something else. Just like what we've learned since the inception of the CDL is that at the beginning they really wanted it to be the NFL for
Yeah.
Call of Duty, or the professional league for Call of Duty, where you have these teams, and it was like trying to copy too much of it. And as we've grown, we've learned that you don't need that geolocation aspect of it. People, especially esports fans, I mean, maybe there are some real sports fans who think this way too, but I think esports fans more so are more loyal to the individual players. And like, if Scump went from Optic to FaZe or another team, they are fans of Scump, and that might be a bad example because it's Optic, but like, we'll use a Beezy because a
Yeah.
Beezy, new player now. Like, if you're a fan of a Beezy, you are now a fan of LA Thieves, and you're not a fan of FaZe because a Beezy changed teams. And it doesn't matter that a Beezy's playing for LA now, and because it doesn't matter where they're playing. They, you're just a fan of that player, and that's who you're rooting for, regardless of where they play, and all that stuff. So I think that's the biggest difference we've learned in terms of how the future of the Call of Duty League could look and how it could succeed in a different way or a different path from these professional sports leagues. They kind of laid the foundation, and Activision Call of Duty League tried to follow that, and I think it's taken a few years to really learn that like you don't have to follow it to a T. You can deviate a little bit, and I think that is one area where they could, like you said, in the future, we get rid of the geolocations and just go with these iconic esports brands.
Yeah, I think year over year, not only Call of Duty esports, but esports as a whole, especially over the last 5 years or so since COVID, I think every year esports has learned more and more that they don't have to be traditional sports, that being different is a kind of a superpower for a lot of the esports, that not trying to fit them neatly into this. Well, this is what the NFL does, this is what the NBA does, this is what Major League Baseball does. Like, they don't have to do that. They can be different. They can be edgier because it's online. They can be more forward thinking. They could do like more experimental stuff because the audience is so much younger in esports than it is in traditional sports, which is a really good thing for esports. Like, that's what, if the NFL could have the average age that esports has, like, of their fans, they would 100% take that. And I think that, that's a really good reason to believe that there's going to be an explosion of esports, like another one. It's obviously exploded like multiple times over the years, but I think it'll happen again. And with Call of Duty League specifically, it can't be overstated, excuse me, how big it is that Paris Gentlemates is a part of this league now. Because I actually was looking it up, and I did this like half an hour ago when we were first talking about it. But the viewership for this past week's matches, the number one peak viewership match of the weekend was Paris versus FaZe. So they had 190,000 people watching that match. The next closest was Optic versus Minnesota, which had 166,000. So the defending world champions in against a team, granted Minnesota's not like a super popular team or anything, but that one was like relatively competitive in some ways, and there were 24,000 more people watching the Gentlemates match. And Gentlemates also had 154,000 watching their Vancouver Surge match. Falcons were a part of two of these. They played Optic, 163,000, another 163,000 when Falcons played LAT. Granted, like, those are the two most popular teams most likely, but like, I think that's a great thing to see, that in the top 5 most widely viewed matches, you had, I think, 6 or 7 different teams a part of those matches, which means that it's not just an Optic league. Granted, like, I'm not saying if Optic is in the finals, if Optic's playing, like, they have the chance to be the top dog, as we saw. And this is something I didn't bring up, but like, the most widely viewed Call of Duty match of all time happened in June, right? Or whenever Champs was, June, July, with Optic versus Vancouver in the grand finals of Champs. That had 340,000 people or something like that watching all at once. That's crazy to think about, to be honest. And that is a really good sign for the future of Call of Duty. Even if it does take Optic, and it is going to take Optic. If Call of Duty esports is going to take off, Optic is going to be a big part of that. But I just think, like, we're, to just circle back to the very beginning, like, we are in a much better place than we should be, considering all of the things that have happened over the last 5 or 6 years, really the last 10 years in Call of Duty. And I think we have to be pretty thankful for that at this point in time. And hopefully it continues to grow. Hopefully the Ego Chall Podcast becomes the biggest podcast in the world, not even bigger than Joe Rogan. And then we're going to be talking some conspiracy theories when we get really big. What happened to Renato Saints? Why did he not go to a bunch of those events? We will be breaking it all down in 2 to 3 years' time. I think that's a good pivot point, talking about Saints, to discuss nothing about him ever again, probably on this podcast, and talk about the matches that we have coming up this weekend in the Call of Duty League. Obviously, last week was the opening weekend, and this will be basically the grand closing for a month or so as the CDL goes into hibernation, which is, probably not a good not a good point when we say like the CDL is in a good place and then like it goes on leave for a month and people kind of forget about it until mid-January. But the second week is coming up, starts on Friday, December 12th. We have 3 matches on Friday, the first of which is the Carolina Royal Ravens versus the Riyadh Falcons. Both teams went winless in week 1. Carolina had a great preseason tournament and then did not look very good at all against the Boston Breach. The Riyadh Falcons did not have a very good preseason tournament, and they did not look great, although they were more competitive in their matches than the final score probably would indicate. I think I'm going to go with the Falcons here. They certainly have more talent on this roster, and just because they went 0-2 doesn't really mean much to me because they played a really, really tough schedule in week 1 that most teams probably would go 0-2 for. So I'm going to go with Riyadh here.
Yeah, I'm going with the Falcons too, and I think this is a massive match for the Falcons team.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of alluded to it last episode and the episode before, talking about how their initial week 1 schedule was very tough, but this week they have very winnable matches, and I think this will be a much better test for what we can expect from the Falcons squad this year. If Falcons loses these matches this week, I think it's going to be very close to like, okay, we gotta raise the red flag here and make a change, sort of like. I don't expect them to make a change before Major 1, even if they do lose both their matches this week. I guess it wouldn't be possible. It would be possible with the break coming up. I would be shocked, but I think this is going to be a much bigger indication for what kind of team Falcons can be. Because if they lose these matches, we're looking at like potential worst team in the league, like category. They're going to be down there. If they win these, then we get a better feel for them potentially being a middle of the pack squad. And then as the season progresses, they have the talent, like you said, they could continue to improve. So we'll have to wait and see. I do think this is, we don't like to over dramatize early season matches or anything like that, but this is all, it feels like as much as and if there isn't actually must-win matches in week 2 of the season, this does feel like as close to that.
Yeah, if Riyadh just has to win one of these matches at the very least, they cannot go 0-2, especially with, like you said, the schedule that they have the rest of the way. Like that's just, it would not be a good thing. They might get a win at some point, even if they went 0-2. Carolina, on the other hand, I really like they're not going to be favored in any of their remaining matches the rest of the way. I don't know if they would be technically favored in this match, but I'm pretty sure this is the closest that they'll be. And so they need to win this match because they play Miami, Minnesota after the break, Toronto, Optic, and LAT. So definitely can't be losing to the Falcons if you have that kind of schedule, unless you want to start in the loser's bracket of Major 1. So kind of a must win in a way. I hate that term just in general, but like it is a really big match for both of these teams. Next up is G2 versus Boston. Obviously, Boston won last week. They beat Carolina. And then G2, they played 2 matches. They beat C9 3-2 in their first match and then lost to Optic in the final match of the weekend. This is Minnesota's only match of this weekend. Boston plays 2. They play Minnesota and Riyadh. I'm going to go with Minnesota. I've obviously been more of a skeptic of my Breach Boys lately, but G2 looked really, really good last week. So I can't understate that, and they played very, very well in the preseason invitational as well. So I'm going to go with Minnesota.
Yeah, I got to go G2 tier too. Notoriously not a huge Boston supporter. I do think they looked better to start the week, but obviously that was against Carolina. So, um, yeah, maybe it's just me having too much faith in Minnesota again and not enough faith in Boston. But I'll die on that hill. It seems like, so give me G2.
Final match on Friday: Toronto versus Vancouver. Toronto beat Miami 3-2 in their only match last week. Vancouver, they were swept by the Paris Gentlemates as expected. I expect Toronto to beat Vancouver as well. Toronto did not look great in their match against Miami, especially considering how poorly Trakes played for a majority of that series. But there's certainly a lot more proven talent on Toronto, and Vancouver just, we've talked about it so much. Like, they just are probably going to have a really tough time to start this season.
Toronto got up to like 130 and they were up 131 to 0 in hard point or whatever. So I think Toronto looked good. Maybe that's the tissue glaze, but yeah, give me Toronto here. I think we were both said it a couple times. This Vancouver team's gonna be gonna take some time to get adjusted and figure things out. So I think Toronto should take this one pretty convincingly.
Saturday, December 13th. This is the most excited I am for a match. The only reason that's probably not the last match is they want to get the French viewership.
True.
So you do it earlier in the day on that. But Paris versus LAT. So Paris went 1-1 last week. They beat Vancouver 3-0, and then they lost in Game 5 to FaZe. LAT went 2-0. They swept FaZe, and they beat the Falcons 3-1. I know, like, the common opponent would seemingly indicate that you should pick LAT because they swept a team that beat Paris. I am a full-blown believer in the Gentlemates. I've been singing their praises for at least weeks now, probably a few months at this point. I am like the first and foremost Dan Ghosty fan club member, and this is a revenge game for my boy Dan Ghosty and for his boy Envoy. So I'm gonna go with Paris to get this win, but this is the most excited I am all weekend for a match.
Absolutely, can't wait for this one. Super excited. I'm going with Gentlemates too. We saw it a couple times in the preseason now already that they that Ghosty and Envoy have beaten their former teammates from last season. I think they did it in both the Monster tournament and the Kson tournament. I'm pretty sure they faced off twice
so,
now.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe this will be just a case where Ghosty and Envoy got the number of their former super team teammates. I do think this should be a really good match though. I think if you wanted to pick LAT, can't blame you. They
No.
should be a strong team and are most likely going to be a very strong team as the season continues. But in this specific showdown, I just got to go Gentlemates. I'm all in on the narrative there of Ghosty's revenge.
Yeah, if you just based your pick off of like what happened last week and when we've actually been in official CDL matches, it would make perfect sense to say that LAT is going to beat Paris. I have no problem with that, but like you said, we saw in the preseason that Paris was able to consistently beat LAT. Granted, not official matches, even obviously less practice than they had going into the first week and this week of matches. But I just think, I literally think that Paris is the second best team in the league, and I think LAT is third, maybe fourth. I don't know, but obviously I think Paris is better. Optic, the undisputed number one team in the league to this point, versus the Miami Heretics is up next. As much as I love Miami, I cannot pick them over Optic, even though the Florida curse is still in effect as far as I know. Optic has really, really struggled against the former Mutineers and even the Heretics. That being said, Miami did not look great in week one. hopefully Trakes is better this week. And this is champs basically is what Dashy said because Miami didn't want to scrim Optic this close to the match. So I'm gonna go with Optic here.
Yeah, I gotta go with Optic. I think this is just, we're gonna have to see if Miami was able to get more practice and how that potentially helps things out. But I think even if Miami was, last year's Miami that was looking really strong, just the way this current Optic team has played to end last year and to start this year, got to go with them until they give us a real reason not to pick them.
And then final match on Saturday, Vancouver versus Cloud9. Pretty interesting matchup here. We talked about it before that they're kind of like the opposite of each other. At least what we think might happen this season is
Yes.
Vancouver starts slow and then gets better just by the nature of getting used to each other and getting used to playing Call of Duty and Legends case, whereas Cloud9 is like a very established group of players, and it's very possible that they could start off the season well and then fade down the stretch, as what we saw with Carolina last year. I'll go Cloud9. Vancouver really hasn't shown anything to make them, like a contender even in this kind of match.
Yep, I gotta go with Cloud9 because that's been my thing. Is think Cloud9's gonna have a hot start. Vancouver isn't, as you just said, and it would be very hypocritical if I picked Vancouver here. So give me C9.
Sunday, December 14th, starting off with the Riyadh Falcons versus the Boston Breach. I'm going to go with Riyadh, but I certainly can see Boston winning this.
Yep, like pretty much same story for me here. I feel like this isn't as much of a quote unquote must win as against Carolina, but this is a very winnable match on paper for both teams really, but especially for Falcons if they have, especially you factor in allegedly how much money has been spent on the team and all that. Like you expect Falcons and the players on this team to show up for a match like this and take care of business. But we'll have to see if they actually get the job done. I definitely, both of us picking Falcons to go 2-0 this week has me very worried, but I guess we'll see.
They just have to go 1-1, like I said earlier. Like they just cannot lose both these matches when Carolina and Boston are probably in the lower, definitely in the lower half of the league. Like they just can't lose these. Can't lose both of them really. Miami versus Cloud9. I mean, I'm gonna go with Miami, of course, but this is like pretty intriguing. Because if Cloud9 performed pretty well, they forced Minnesota to a Game 5. They had a great preseason. We're both predicting them to beat Vancouver the previous day. I just think Miami's more talented, so that's kind of how I picked this game. But I could see this going either way, really.
Yep, I gotta go with Cloud9. It's good because we haven't had any differing opinion yet, so at least this week. But yeah, I mean, I think it kind of lines up on probably to the disadvantage of Miami here, in my opinion, at least of how I look at these teams. Just because I think that Cloud9 could be that sneaky squad at the start, and when Miami is a team that seemingly is under practice versus a team that potentially is like, that was my whole theory, was that Cloud9 could have a good start to the season if they get ahead of the game and figure some stuff out. Like we don't know how much they've been grinding or anything like that, but I just think Cloud9 could be that sneaky squad at the start, and this is a matchup where, a couple months down the road, I wouldn't be surprised if Miami just 3-0 25-minute DoorDash challenges Cloud9. But right now, at this point, with seemingly, allegedly, potentially a lack of practice for Miami with this this 4-man roster, I think Cloud9 can steal a win here.
And final match on Sunday, Toronto versus FaZe Vegas. Yeah, I really don't know what to expect out of this one because I certainly think that FaZe is better, just like on paper, but FaZe didn't kind of looked like not great against LAT. They looked pretty good against Paris. We've seen this is just a completely new roster for them, and I worry about that. But I'll go with FaZe. But I think that's more just a talent thing than anything else.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with phase two. I kind of I wanted to like go back and forth a little bit and see if I could like talk myself into picking Toronto, but I just think most likely see this as a 3-2 win for FaZe, and they get it done through the searches. Obviously, the start of the season for FaZe and Hardpoint wasn't great, and conversely, Toronto had a pretty dominant first Hardpoint there against Miami. They did lose a Hardpoint to Miami too, though, so it's not like I'm expecting
Hmm.
Toronto to just fully be some Hardpoint juggernaut. But it's been a very small sample size because we only saw one Toronto match too last week. So really just don't know too much of what to expect from Toronto with this new squad against a quote unquote top team. And although I do believe in a lot of the players on Toronto, I just think this is going to be a really good match. And like I said, I would, if I had to attach a score to it, I think FaZe gets this done 3-2 through the S&Ds. But either way, I'm expecting this to probably be the second best match of the weekend.
The pick'em as it stands right now is Bink 7-2, me 6-3, Tremor 0-0. And I think that about does it for this week's episode. Please like, subscribe, or follow the podcast feed wherever you're listening or watching on. Make sure to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at JBank with 2Ks, at Pres Byers, and the podcast tours at Ego Chall Podcast. I don't think we'll be back on Sunday night. I think it'll be Monday afternoon because I'll be coming back into town on Sunday night. But it'll be a day later, most likely, but we will still planning to have 2 shows next week. The first one to break down the matches that happened over the weekend, and then 2, potentially talk about news or something else related to the CDL or maybe just broader Call of Duty, because that will be the start of the long break that the CDL is going on for the holidays. I think they'll be back like the 9th of January at that point. So we'll have to fill some time over the following 4 weeks. And obviously holidays will play a factor in that as well. But we always appreciate you guys stopping by, tuning in, listening, watching. We always appreciate you. And I think that about does it for me. Bink, take it away.
Yeah, thank you guys as always for all the support. Another example of us thinking we're gonna have a short show and then we go on a big ramble and it's longer than expected, but I think it was a good one. I think we had a solid, productive convo there in the middle about the future of the game and the league. So hope you guys enjoy that. And yeah, we'll be back whenever we're able to be back and breaking down this last set of qualifier matches before the holiday break. So we'll see you guys then. Thank you guys as always, and remember to send the chow.